Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. It was one of those quiet nights where everything felt still, too still. The hum of the city outside was muffled by thick curtains, and the only sound in the room was the soft shuffle of fabric as I settled under the covers, headphones snug over my ears. I was lost in a playlist of slow, dreamy music, the kind that makes you forget where you are for a while. That's when it happened. He walked in without a sound. My husband. The same man who had shared everything with me, meals, laughter, even our deepest fears, but tonight, there was something different in his eyes. I didn't notice him at first. I was too wrapped in the melody, too wrapped in my own little world, when suddenly I felt a shift in the bed behind me. That electric feeling of someone's presence, close, warm, and familiar. We've been married for 4 years. And in that time, we've had our share of highs and lows, arguments about silly things, missed calls that turned into cold silences, but also long walks at midnight, kisses that seemed to stop time, and whispered promises under shared blankets. But tonight felt like one of those moments where everything could change. There's something about being close to someone in the dark, with only the sound of your heartbeat and your thoughts. As I turned my head slightly, pretending I hadn't noticed him yet, my breath caught. He wasn't saying anything. He wasn't touching me yet. But his silence spoke volumes. It carried every moment of love, confusion, desire, and unspoken questions we'd buried over time. He leaned down slowly, his breath just brushing the edge of my neck. I could feel his hesitation. Was it a question, a challenge, or maybe just love trying to find its way back through touch? My fingers tightened around the blanket. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't even sure I wanted to speak. It was as if the past and present were colliding in this one charged moment. And then, just as the song changed in my headphones, I felt his hand move, gentle, curious, full of intent. Not just physical, but emotional. That's when I froze, not out of fear, but because I didn't know what this moment meant. Was it the start of something healing? Or was it a message we'd been too afraid to say out loud? Before we continue, tell me, what would you do in a moment like this? When love feels so close yet distant, and every second feels like a turning point. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should she speak up or stay silent? Would you trust the touch of someone you've known for years but feel distant from lately? Let's talk. Vote in the poll and stay tuned for part 2. The air in the room was heavy, not just with warmth, but with all the things we hadn't said in weeks, maybe months. He had been coming home later, more tired, more distant. And I'd been pulling away too, caught up in work, stress, and maybe my own quiet disappointments. We hadn't fought, but we hadn't really touched either. We just let the silence grow between us, like a shadow stretching across the room that neither of us dared to name. That's why tonight felt different. There was something raw in the way he looked at me, like he was searching for something that might have slipped away. I could feel it even without seeing him. My body was tense, not out of fear, but because I didn't know what would come next. I wanted to turn around and speak, to ask if everything was okay. But some part of me stayed still, waiting to see if he would be the one to close the distance. We used to talk for hours in bed. About our dreams, childhood stories, even the small silly things like how we hated soggy cereal or who left the lights on. That version of us felt far away now. But tonight, he was here, and I could feel his presence like a quiet question pressing against my skin. My headphones kept playing a soft, slow song. Something about missing someone who was right beside you. And as I lay there, I wondered, was this his way of reaching out? Or was it a sign of something breaking even more? There was tension in his movements, careful yet filled with an urgency I hadn't seen in a while. It wasn't just about touch. It was about trust, memory, longing. In the soft light spilling in from the hallway, I saw his hand resting near mine. Not touching. Just there. Close enough to feel, far enough to question. Maybe he didn't know what to say either. Maybe he was just as lost in this moment as I was. As I took a slow breath, I thought back to when we first met, how fast we connected, how easy everything felt in the beginning. We laughed all the time. Even doing the laundry together was fun. But somewhere along the way, that ease had faded, replaced by routines and unspoken worries. So I stayed still, listening to the music, to the silence between us, to my own heartbeat, wondering if love could still speak without words. What would happen next? I didn't know. But I wasn't ready to move, not yet. He didn't move for a while. Just stayed there, breathing slow and steady, close enough for me to feel the warmth of his body, but still not crossing that invisible line. It made me wonder, was he struggling like I was? Wanting something? Fearing something? The quiet between us wasn't cold, but it was fragile, like any sound could shatter it. My heart was loud in my chest, and I couldn't tell if I was scared or hopeful. Maybe both. I kept my eyes on the ceiling, counting the soft shadows cast by the dim light. I thought about last weekend. How we sat in the same room but barely spoke. I had asked if he was okay, and he just nodded, distracted. He had been like that more and more lately, pulling away, saying less, touching less. And I, instead of fighting for us, just accepted the silence like it was part of marriage. But tonight, it felt like he was trying to speak without words. My fingers twitched slightly, brushing against the sheet near his hand. I didn't grab him. Just let the motion hang there like a question. He noticed. I could tell by the way his body tensed for a second. Still, he didn't speak. That's when I realized we were both waiting for the other to make the first move, not just physically, but emotionally. Maybe we were both afraid of hearing something we didn't want to know. There was another layer to all this. Last month, I had seen him texting late at night. Not often, just twice, maybe 3 times. When I asked who it was, he said it was a colleague. I believed him. Mostly. But the doubt stayed in the back of my mind like a whisper. Was there someone else? Or was I just paranoid because I missed the way we used to be? On the other side, I hadn't been perfect either. I'd been venting to a coworker, nothing romantic, just long conversations about life and feeling stuck. But I knew how it would look if he ever read those messages. Innocent words, maybe, but loaded with emotion I hadn't shared with my own husband. That's a kind of distance too, one we both helped create. As the minutes passed, I could feel his hand shift again, closer this time. Still not touching. Almost like he was asking, can I? Should I? And I didn't know how to answer, not with words, not yet. We were standing at the edge of something important, but I wasn't sure which way we would fall. Do you think they can rebuild what they've lost? Is it trust that's missing, or something deeper? Let me know in the comments. What do you think is really going on between them? Was that late-night text just work? Or something more? And do you believe emotional distance can be more dangerous than physical? I want to hear your take. The air was thicker now, like the room itself was holding its breath. His hand finally touched mine, just the edge of his fingers brushing my skin, and it sent a quiet shock through me. I didn't pull away, but I didn't move closer either. My eyes were still fixed on the ceiling, but my thoughts were racing. So much was buried between us, questions left unasked, emotions pushed aside, nights where we had rolled away from each other instead of leaning in. And now, all of it was right here in this single touch. He whispered my name. Just once. Soft, low, unsure. It wasn't just a call, it was a plea, like he wanted me to tell him what to do next. And for a moment, I thought I would answer. But the words caught in my throat. Because what would I even say? That I missed him? That I didn't know if I could trust him anymore? That I was afraid we were only holding on to the past, not building a future? There was a long pause. I could feel his gaze on me now, studying me, searching for a sign. My fingers curled slightly, almost touching his, but not quite. We were towing the edge of something. I could feel it in my chest, that unbearable pressure before a dam breaks. The kind of moment where everything could shift. Where one wrong move could pull everything apart, or maybe, just maybe, it could pull us back together. And then he moved closer. Not fast. Not forceful. Just enough to close the space between us, his arm brushing mine. I felt his breath at my ear now, his voice still low. "Talk to me," he said. Just that. Simple words, but they cracked something open in me. I blinked hard, willing myself to stay calm, to stay in control. But my heart felt exposed, because I wanted to speak. I needed to. But the fear of what would come out, the truth, the pain, maybe even the regret, kept my lips sealed. That's when my phone lit up on the nightstand. A message. Just one, but it felt like it echoed through the room. I saw his eyes flick toward it, and suddenly the tension snapped tighter. His body shifted slightly, the mood shifting with it. Who was it from? Would he ask? Would I lie? Or was this the moment that would change everything? Tell me, viewers, what do you think she should say if he asks about the message? And if you're him, would you ask? Or pretend you never saw it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The light from my phone screen flickered again, casting a brief glow on both our faces. I saw the way his jaw tightened. He didn't say anything, but the air around us shifted, more tense, more uncertain. My heart thudded louder now, not from the music still playing faintly in my headphones, but from the unspoken storm I knew was coming. His eyes met mine, and in that silent moment, I knew he had seen the name on the screen. He didn't need to ask. I slowly sat up, taking the headphones off, letting the music stop. Everything suddenly felt too quiet. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the wind brushing against the window, and both our breaths, uneven, waiting. I reached for the phone but stopped just short. He didn't look away. "You're not going to open it?" he asked, voice low, careful. I shook my head slowly, unsure what to say. "It's not what you think," I finally whispered, though I wasn't even sure what he was thinking, or what I was trying to defend. His gaze softened for a second, then turned harder, like he was trying to keep his emotions locked behind his eyes. I wasn't thinking anything. Not until now. That hit harder than I expected. Not because he sounded angry, but because he sounded hurt. That quiet kind of hurt that doesn't yell, just pulls away slowly, painfully. And just when I thought I'd have to explain the message, or lie about it, or confess something I hadn't yet processed myself, he leaned back and sighed. Then he reached into the drawer by his side of the bed and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I stared at it, confused. He handed it to me, no words. I opened it with shaky hands. It was a printed flight confirmation. 2 one-way tickets to Moscow. Dated for next week. My stomach flipped. I looked up at him, speechless. He looked exhausted. "I booked them 2 weeks ago. Thought maybe if we got out of here, we'd find a way back to us." I couldn't respond. My throat felt tight. All this time I had been doubting him, questioning his silence, wondering if there was someone else. But he'd been planning a trip, something bold, something that felt like love. And I had been messaging a coworker about how distant we felt. Was it betrayal? Or just a cry for help? The stakes suddenly felt higher. The questions louder. Did we still want to save this? Or had we both gone too far in our own ways? I held the paper in my lap, torn between guilt and shock. My phone buzzed again. This same name. Same quiet reminder of the emotional distance I had tried to fill elsewhere. "Now, I want to hear from you." Should she confess everything? Should he bring up the texts? What would you do if your partner gave you plane tickets the same night your secrets were on the verge of being discovered? Tell me in the comments, how do you think this will end? I looked at the tickets again, heart pounding. Moscow. A place tied to so many memories, our first winter together, his mother's cooking, that night we danced in the snow. I remembered how happy we were then. He had booked these tickets thinking we could go back to that. back to before all the doubts, before the distance. I swallowed hard and finally looked him in the eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I was scared you'd already left, even if you were still here." His words cut deep because they were true. I had been emotionally somewhere else for weeks. We both had. I closed the message on my phone without opening it. It didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was the man sitting next to me, silent, vulnerable, and still trying. So I told him everything. About the late-night messages, about how I felt invisible, about the guilt I'd buried. And he listened, really listened, without interrupting or defending. Then he opened up too. About his long hours at work, the pressure of pretending things were fine, and the fear that we were slowly fading. We sat there in the dark, two people finally saying what should have been said long ago. The tension didn't vanish, but it changed. It became something else, healing, raw, real. We weren't perfect, but we were finally honest. He reached out, this time without hesitation, and I let him. Our fingers locked, not in passion, but in something deeper. A quiet promise to try again. It felt like the start of something new. And just as the room began to settle, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail. From the same contact. I hesitated, then played it on speaker. The voice on the other end wasn't who I expected. It wasn't my coworker. It was his voice. My husband's. "I know you've been messaging someone you think is just a friend. But it's been me all along. I needed to know if you still missed me, if you still cared." My breath caught. He looked at me, unreadable. "I had to be sure," he said quietly. "I didn't know how else to reach you." The twist hit like a wave. Every message, every confession, it was him. And somehow I had fallen in love with him all over again, without even knowing it. What would you have done if you were her? Could you forgive such a twist? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I need to know what you think. I sat frozen, my phone still between us, playing his voice one last time. Every message I had thought was private, every confession typed in the quiet of my own loneliness, it was him. And yet, instead of anger, what I felt was an overwhelming mix of relief and heartbreak. He hadn't been gone. He had been trying, just in a different way. A way that made me look inward and ask myself, did I even really know the man I married anymore? When the message ended, the silence between us felt different. This time, it wasn't full of fear or distance. It was full of everything real, pain, truth, and the kind of love that survives more than just fairy tale moments. I turned to him slowly, my eyes still glassy. "Why didn't you just tell me it was you?" He looked tired. But there was something hopeful in his smile. "Because I wanted to know if you'd still choose me when you thought I wasn't watching." His hand reached for mine again, steady and certain this time. And I took it not because everything was perfect now, but because something important had been uncovered. Honesty. Desire. A shared willingness to rebuild. The next morning felt lighter. We didn't pack for Moscow right away. We made breakfast together instead, just like we used to. We sat at the kitchen table barefoot, sipping coffee and laughing softly over nothing. The trip could wait. What mattered was that we'd finally stopped running from the silence. We deleted the messages. We didn't need them anymore. Over the next few weeks, we talked more. We shared old stories and made new plans. We argued too, about small things, like which side of the closet needed more space. But now, the arguments ended in laughter, not distance. Our love wasn't just rekindled, it was redefined. No longer about the perfect moments, but about showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And sometimes in bed, when we're lying in the same stillness as that night, I'll put my headphones back on, not to escape, but to remember how it all changed. How in the quiet, he found a way to reach me. And how I, finally, reached back. Now tell me, how did this ending make you feel? Would you have forgiven him? Do you think love can survive a test like that? Comment below and let me know if you'd like a sequel to this story. I'd love to hear your thoughts.